Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our session, Employment First, Getting a Job in New Jersey. My name is Denise Lugo-Fowler, and I'm the Director of Training and Outreach for Disability Rights New Jersey, and I'm thrilled to be your host today for this session. I will be monitoring the chat and supporting our speakers throughout this session. Some housekeeping items before I turn it over to our speakers. If you can, please put your microphones on mute and turn off your videos. That's just to keep helps to limit the background noises and other distractions. And also, we are using the chat area to add comments, share information, and ask questions during the session. So we encourage everyone to be interactive as possible and encourage everyone to add any comments that they'd like in there and ask questions. There are captions available for anyone who needs those to support them. The button is across the bottom of the Zoom menu. It either has a CC or live transcript. Click on that and the captions will appear. And if you experience any technical issues, shoot me a chat message and hopefully I can resolve the issue. And finally, the session is being recorded, so we will have these available for everyone to access later on. And that covers all of my housekeeping items. So with that, please join me in welcoming our speakers today, Jill Hoegel, who is the Director of Investigations and Monitoring, and Charles Ouslander, who is a Senior Staff Attorney, both from Disability Rights New Jersey. And with that, I turn it over to them.
Yeah, well, welcome everyone. My name is Charles Ouslander. I'm an attorney here at Disability Rights New Jersey. And we're present for today's roundtable discussion about New Jersey being an employment first state. I'm going to give just a brief introduction to what employment first is here in New Jersey, and then talk a little bit about the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services, or DVRS. And then my colleague Jill will be talking about DDD, who offers services, the Division of Developmental Disabilities, and what employment services they can offer as well. Both of these agencies are here to help disabled persons obtain employment, secure it, maintain it, and even advance in that employment if they so choose to. What I first wanted to do is give you sort of a very brief background on employment first. New Jersey became an employment first state back in 2012. And what that means is that ordinarily competitive integrative employment in the workforce is the first and preferred type of education outcome for people who have some sort of disability. The whole policy of employment first is that individuals, even with the most serious disabilities, should have an opportunity to work out in the community amongst other people. They shouldn't necessarily have to be in extended employment, which is sometimes known by a more collegial name of sheltered workshops. Prior to 2012, around 2011, Medicaid had decided that they were no longer going to fund services for vocational rehabilitation services if they were provided in sheltered workshops. And what happened is the Division of Developmental Disabilities began to phase out using those workshops. The state of New Jersey, however, decided that it was going to transfer extended employment or sheltered workshops from DDD to the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services, which is where it is today. So DVRS is responsible for monitoring sheltered workshops as a service, as part of the services they offer with vocational rehabilitation services. What we'd like to talk about today are the different services that both DVRS and DDD can provide for those seeking employment who happen to have a disability. I'll be talking about the DVRS services, and then my colleague Jill will be talking about services offered by DDD. I'd like to say at the outset that this is less of a presentation, it's really more of a conversation, we hope. So if anyone has any questions, and it looks like we have a relatively small group, feel free to interrupt me. We'll have you unmuted. You could also put a question in the chat box and I'll answer. I'll just simply stop and answer it before I go on with my presentation. And the same applies to my colleague Jill. Our goal here is to have a conversation. If anyone has any questions about the services offered by these two state agencies or what employment first means in terms of a policy and how it's actually being applied here in New Jersey, we really would appreciate hearing from you rather than simply informing you about here are the services these agencies provide. Because certainly you can go to the websites for each agency and find that information. So with that, I'm going to start with basically an overview of DVRS. The Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services provides services to individuals with various disabilities. They do not, and I'm emphasizing the adverb not, apply to those individuals who are blind, visually impaired, or deafblind. That's a sister vocational rehabilitation agency known as the Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired. They simply handle a different group of people. DVRS would ordinarily handle people with intellectual or developmental disabilities. DVRS really offers a broad range and scope of services for individuals who are seeking to be employed, who happen to have a disability that is a substantial impediment to obtaining employment. It's presumed that individuals with disabilities who are seeking employment can benefit from vocational rehabilitation services. So that's a good thing. It's essentially a fairly low standard for eligibility, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But DVRS offers a real broad range of services. Those services are mandated by the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. There's been other intervening laws that have been passed by the federal government, most recently with the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act of 2014. But in a nutshell, DVRS offers its services to those individuals with disabilities, including career counseling, job interest evaluation. They can provide higher education, that could be community college or a full four-year college. They can provide training courses or certificate courses, which don't necessarily lead to a degree, but provide services or certificates that will allow someone to begin working in a particular field. They also provide job placement services and also what are known as restorative services. And restorative services are very important. They can provide treatments such as therapeutic services. They can provide certain assistive technology, hearing aids, glasses, pretty much any service that an individual with a disability who needs in order to obtain competitive integrative employment can be obtained through the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services. So it really is a very good state agency that as a matter of law is dedicated to helping people with disabilities find jobs. Now, in a little while after Jill explains the services DDD offers, I can go into more detail about some of those services, or if people have questions about it, I'd be more than glad to answer them. I will say that you do have to apply to get these services. So even if you're a client of DDD, you still have a right to apply for services for DVRS. It can be done online. They now have a link since the pandemic has occurred. They're not open officially, which is why you'll probably have to apply online for now. When the field offices are reopened, you could then make an appointment to go there and submit an application. And ultimately, once you apply, they'll make a determination about eligibility. If in fact you are eligible, they'll then schedule a meeting with a VR counselor. It could be over the phone or over the internet, not necessarily in person. And you'll have a conversation, a dialogue with that person about what services they can offer and under what circumstances. So at this point, I'm going to take a break. Does anyone have any questions right now about DVRS or employment first? Because we would like to make sure we know that there are people listening. And if you have questions, we'd like to start answering them now. There's no need to be polite. Do we have people unmuted, Denise, or do they have that ability to do so?
Yes, everyone is able to unmute themselves.
Okay. So if anyone has any questions at this point, we can always continue, but as I said, it's sort of an open mic here at this roundtable discussion. So if we don't have any questions, I'm going to hand it off to Jill to give an over. Oh, I see a hand raised. Yes. Are you unmuted? Can you unmute yourself? Because I saw a hand raised there for a moment. It looks like it went down. All right. So there are no questions. I'm going to hand it off to Jill to give an overview of DDD services in order to obtain employment here in New Jersey.
Thanks, Charles. So let me start with, if you are an individual who's enrolled in the Division of Developmental Disabilities, then you're likely on their home and community-based waiver services. So there's two programs that DDD operates under their home and community-based waiver, and that's the supports program and the community care program. Both of those programs offer employment services that you can access using your individual budget and your person-centered planning. However, one of the requirements, and if you're thinking, yeah, I'm going to go to DDD first, is that you do go to DVRS first. DDD is going to require that if you are someone who's looking for employment, who is in need of employment services, your first stop is going to be the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, even if you're a DDD client. So if for some reason you're not eligible for services from the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, or the specific services that you need from DVR are not otherwise available to you through them, then your DDD employment services, would kick in. Your service plan, every year, an individual in DDD goes through a person-centered planning process, and they develop with their support coordinator an individual service plan. There's a component of the individual service plan that's called Pathways to Employment. And so that is something that has to be visited at least every year during the person-centered planning process. So wherever you are on the employment spectrum, from, you're ready for competitive integrated employment, all the way to, I'm not really sure what work is about or what I want to do or what my interests are. During that person-centered planning process, you're going to address sort of all of those things and then develop the goals and discuss the supports that you would need to help you, whatever, wherever you fall on that spectrum. So mentioned your support coordinator. That person is your first link in accessing any of these employment services that DDD offers through the supports program and the community care program. Your support coordinator helps you do your individual service plan every year. They're going to be the person that helps you link up with the right service providers, get the right supports put into your plan. And so some of the services that DDD offers are assistive technology services, career planning, pre-vocational training, supported employment services, and transportation. I would encourage you, and I can probably at some point drop them in the link, but if you're enrolled either in the sports program or community care program, there are very, very comprehensive policies and procedures manuals for each one of those programs. And they have a lot of detail about each one of those services that goes over what the eligibility requirements are to receive that service and what, limitations there might be as far as receiving that service. So you should also know that in regards to supported employment services, DDD can offer supported employment services that are beyond your individual budget. So anybody who may be here that's not familiar with the process, you're assessed by DDD. Your DDD does an assessments need for individuals, and you're given a budget, which is an amount of money that you can use to purchase all the services that you need in the specific program that you're in. So something that comes up is someone needs supported employment services, but they don't have enough money in their budget for it, or they're hesitant maybe about using some of that money because maybe they want it for something else. Because the Division of Developmental Disabilities is really committed to this employment first and making sure that individuals who want to work have the supports and services that they need to work, they are able to provide supportive employment services to individuals who need those beyond what might be in your individual budget. And, that's not something that a lot of people know, although they do have it now on their website and now in the policies manual. So, your budget cap should never be a barrier to getting the supports and services that you need to explore or find or maintain employment, competitive integrated employment. So with that, I am going to open it up to any questions that people have. We, specifically, we did not prepare, a PowerPoint or have sort of a PowerPoint up because we really wanted to encourage, a dialogue. This is a roundtable. If we were all together in person, which one day we will be, we'd be sitting around a table having a discussion and talking to each other. So I really encourage anybody, take yourself off mute, put your video on if you want, put your questions in chat, or just throw them out there to us. We're happy to answer any questions you might have.
I actually have one that that has come to our table when we've done outreach events. How does someone actually access DDD employment services?
So if you're enrolled with DDD and you're on one of those two programs, the supports or the community care program, the first thing that you're gonna do is you're gonna talk to your support coordinator. You're gonna hopefully you have a good support coordinator. Some people do, some people don't. You can change your support coordinator if you're not happy with the person you have, but that's your link. That's your first person who's gonna help you in determining what you need and how to access it. If you have never gone to the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation and applied for services, they're likely going to suggest that that's your first stop to see if the services that DVR provides are going to be more appropriate to you first. And in the event they're not, or they're not available, or you're not eligible for DVR, then your support coordinator will help you put the services into your plan, the employment services into your plan from DDD. You can use your DDD budget for. Thank you, Denise.
No question. I'm going to follow up on that a little bit. As Jill said earlier, your first stop is going to be DVRS. You're going to first request services from them, and you're going to go through an eligibility screening and evaluation. So assuming that you've applied either online or you've done it over the internet through Zoom, or maybe when a field office is open, they're going to make an evaluation to see if you can use their services. And I wanted to point out that DVRS, because it's a federal program, vocational rehabilitation, there's a really high standard for them to turn people away and say you really can't benefit from their services. So what will ordinarily happen is if there's a question about whether a given client can benefit from VR services, they may have what's called a trial work period. And what they try to do at that point is if there's a specific job or position that you're interested in, they're going to set up a work period where over a period of time, you're going to engage in that type of labor or job or employment. And the goal is to make sure they do it under circumstances that are as close to a competitive integrated employment situation. Meaning if it's going to be out in the real world doing something, say, working at a store, they're going to try to at least set up a circumstance as close as possible. And they're going to observe you. They may have a job coach assigned, and they'll see what things you're good at, what things you might need assistance with. But before DVRS can turn you away and say, we just don't think you can benefit from the services we offer, they have to prove it by what's called clear and convincing evidence, which is a legal phrase, but basically it's a really high standard of proof that a VR agency has to show before they can say, we don't think you can benefit from our services. And if we assume just for a moment that's the case, that doesn't mean that's the end of your seeking services in order to be employed out in the community. You can always go back to DDD, as Jill has just mentioned, the support coordinator, and seek employment services there. But you're first going to start with DVRS at the beginning. And as I said, it's hard for them. They have to work with you and make a good faith, honest attempt to see if you can benefit from services that would allow you to obtain and maintain employment. Does anyone have any questions about either agency or Employment First? We genuinely encourage them.
And, I just for context, I also wanted to maybe give you a little bit of examples. I know, we're talking generally, we say services and supports. I think that covers a real broad range of things. So I wanted to give you some examples, at least through DDD, the kinds of services, employment-related services that they offer through the two programs. I mentioned assistive technology, and some examples of that service would be an evaluation for your assistive technology needs. It would also include any designing or fitting or customizing of devices, repair and replacement costs, and also the training and the technical assistance that individuals would need to utilize the assistive technology services or devices. Career planning is one of the services that I mentioned, and that is pretty much self-explanatory. It's helping individuals determine a career path, and they can do assessments, situational assessments or interest assessments, helping develop goals and objectives to help individuals decide on the career path that they want to take. I mentioned also pre-vocational training. So some examples of pre-vocational training are like job clubs or learning basic computer skills, developing effective communication, or learning and developing skills related to just your demeanor in the workplace, how you dress, how you conduct yourself, how you prepare for any problems that might arise in the workplace. So that's really getting you ready for finding and maintaining a job. And then I mentioned supported employment. That can be provided on an individual basis, or that can be provided in small groups. So that includes like job coaching or benefits planning, travel training, on-site job training, or job analysis. And then transportation. I mean, I know that's a big thing that's oftentimes comes up quite often as a barrier to getting or maintaining employment. And transportation is a service that's offered, at least through DDD, in both of the supports program and the community care program. And that can be provided through generic transportation services, or using and hiring a direct support professional who can provide transportation services to or from the job site.
It looks like I see a question there in the box. Can you give examples of what DRNJ can do to help someone who has issues with DDD or DVRS and employment services? So I can answer the part about DVRS. We have a unit here in Disability Rights New Jersey called the CAP unit, the Client Assistance Program unit. And that unit's dedicated to helping people resolve any disputes or issues they maybe have with obtaining services from either DVRS or CBVI, but we'll focus on DVRS. If an individual does have an issue, whether it's the application process or eligibility, or even obtaining specific services in order to obtain and maintain employment, they can contact Disability Rights New Jersey. You go through our intake unit. You can provide the information about what your issue is. Just give us a narrative explanation about what the problem might be. And then that will end up being screened and will go to the CAP unit, the Client Assistance Program unit, and someone would contact you or guardian to see what sort of problem or obstacle you have in obtaining services from the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services. And our goal is to make sure that those individuals receive their services under federal and state law. So if someone had that problem, they could simply contact our organization, give us the specifics, and we can assist you in obtaining those services.
And so while there's not, cap necessarily for, the cap program doesn't apply for obtaining DDD services. The process would essentially be the same. If you are someone who's having trouble accessing services from DDD, you would contact us. You would go through our intake, and someone on our employment team, could help you depending on what your specific problem is, might give you information, might give you some guidance as far as how you can resolve your problem, might help you make those connections with DDD, with your support coordinator, to assist you in accessing the services that you need.
Anyone else have questions about the services? If not, I'm going to go on a little bit more about some of the services that I think they're very broad and they're good services to be offered. I had mentioned earlier on that DVRS offers what are called restorative services. And I think that would be very useful to people in the DD population. They do diagnostic evaluations. It can be psychological, it could be neurological, it could be emotional. They also provide emotional restorative services such as therapy or counseling. And you can also have physical restorative services if in fact it's a physical disability or medical condition that is the substantial impairment in obtaining employment. Just being able to have those evaluations and then discussing with the VR counselor how to overcome them or how to accommodate them is really a big plus with DVRS. I mean, the federal law mandates that they provide these broad range of services to ensure that you can obtain competitive integrated employment. I mean, the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, as I mentioned earlier, really is a broad remedial piece of federal law. And they will do practically anything to help an individual with a disability find services to accommodate that disability and obtain employment. It doesn't have to be full-time employment. It could be part-time employment. It might even be seasonal or intermittent. It doesn't matter. As long as they understand you're willing to seek a job, you want it, and you're looking for a job that satisfies your career interests, your vocational interests, your abilities and skills, DVRS is mandated by law to help you find those positions and provide the services. Restorative services, I found, tends to go a very long way in helping people who have disabilities who might think, gee, I really am not qualified for this job. I'd like to do this position, but I just don't think I can do it. It's not the case. DVRS will provide services once they do an evaluation, and they'll problem solve with you to figure out how do we accommodate this person so they can obtain a real world job, as opposed to say maybe staying in an extended employment position where the level of skills plateaus after a while. And there are people who may be in sheltered workshops who decide, gee, I'd like to do more. Well, DVRS can help you do more. And they're required, frankly, every year to review people who are on extended employment to see if they're interested in doing something different and providing services to help you succeed. So again, we'll open it up for questions if anyone has anything they're curious about in terms of what these state agencies offer. No questions
While
in the
you're
chat box.
While you're all thinking of your questions, because I know that you have them, let me take this opportunity to mention that, with the support of our sister agency, the New Jersey Council on Developmental Disabilities, this webinar is possible, this summit is possible, and also the self-advocacy resources that we've been able to author are possible. So let me let you know that on our website, disabilityrightsnj.org, which Denise is going to drop in the chat, on that website, there's a section for self-advocacy resources. And so all of the information that Charles and I just mentioned, all of the information about the services that are offered by DVRS and all of the services that are offered by DDD, we have developed fact sheets for both of those, and they are available in the self-advocacy resources section of our website. So I would encourage you to go there, check it out, and check out all the other cool stuff that is there. Okay, now give us your questions.
Jill, can I mention about back in July, we were out at the 5 workshops?
Sure. Barb, go
Yeah.
ahead if you'd like to talk about that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jill and I and Charles and Susan Head and Kathleen, we did this project that was the DD Council's project. And I went out there to talk about employment for people with disabilities and how I got my job with Disability Rights New Jersey. And then first of all, I read our introduction about what we do and what we were about. So it was very good going out to speaking at the shelter workshops, and people, a lot of the individuals really want to get out and get a job and get a competitive job and making that real dough. That's what they would like to do. Some want to work in the supermarket, some want to work at Amazon or something like that, and some of them want to work out doing what they like to have a career like they would like to do out there. And then I explained to them how I got my job with disability rights, because I have the connections, and then I was on the PAD advisory board. So that's what it was, and I like doing that, going out to the shelter workshop. That's a good project.
Well, we're all about sharing the information, right? So we did over the summer, had a targeted project and went out to some of the shelter workshop settings so that we could give pretty much this same presentation to the individuals who were working there, who maybe were interested in pursuing employment outside of the workshop or other opportunities, to make sure that everybody had the information that they needed to make the best choices for themselves. And Barbara was a great support. She shared her story about how she was able to stop working at a sheltered workshop and get gainful competitive employment, thankfully with us. So that went really, really well over the summer. Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to add, I mean, when we went to these shelter workshops, some of the comments I heard from participants in it is that they would like to consider working outside the workshops, but their concerns were about having support. And what I mean by that is they needed transportation, or they needed a job coach, or they needed supported employment, which is sort of an intensive period where you have a job coach with one-on-one help in order to learn a specific job duty or duties. And I can tell you, just like restorative services, job coaching and support services are freely available from DVRS, whether it's time limited, whether it's supported employment, or whether it's long-term follow along, which is when you finally have a job and you're performing at it, but you still have someone assisting you on a daily or routine basis to make sure that you've learned the job duties, you're able to do them competently day after day after day, and you don't have to worry that one day that job coach or other support person is going to disappear. It's not the case. Same thing with transportation, as Jill mentioned, that tends to be an issue for a lot of people in the disabled community when it comes to work, whether it's part-time or full-time. That's a service that you can get from DVRS. They can provide transportation to and from work. So again, there's a large number of services that are available to people who do want to work and feel they're not going to have the supports in order to do their job. It's not the case. So you would first make your application to DVRS. You might have to go through a trial work period. You might have to contact CAP if you encounter some resistance, and we'll see what the problems are. But even if it doesn't work out with DVRS, you can always then deal with DDD and use their employment services. There's more than one way for you to find employment, and being disabled should not be a barrier to it. Looks like we have some questions maybe in the chat box.
Yeah, there's a question in the chat box about what if my DDD budget doesn't support the employment services that I need? And thank you, Jacqueline. Jacqueline is here with us and she's a support coordinator and answered the question with what I mentioned before, that if your budget's already used up or otherwise, dedicated to other things, the support coordinator can help you reach out to DDD and access additional supported employment services that you need beyond what your budget allows. So your budget and whatever the cap is on your budget should never be a barrier to accessing employment services. And if it is, that would be a reason that you would contact Disability Rights New Jersey.
Anyone else have other questions? That's why we're here today, is to talk about employment for the disabled and how to obtain it.
Like I always say, Jill, people with disabilities, all types of abilities, are people like everyone else that could be out there working and getting a better wage, better pay.
Absolutely, Barb.
Yeah.
It's always best to take a chance and see if you can find some other employment, especially if it's something you're interested in. And again, going back to the services that are offered by both agencies, career evaluations, job evaluations, even if you're going to do a try before you buy, where you have a trial work period and you decide, let me try something for a little while. How much support do I need? What sort of services might I need to be successful, whether it's transportation or long-term follow-up? Those are things you're worth trying to be employed, or at least to make the attempt.
I have a question for you.
Yes, Eleanor.
On my video, I'm right here. Hi,
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you ever hear hesitation from people that work at sheltered workshops, that they're worried they're going to lose their community of coworkers, and what you would say to that, because I think sometimes it can also be comfortable in the sheltered workshop because you're part of a community, and it might be a little scary at first to go into outside employment. So how would you react to that concern? Thank you.
That's a very, very common concern and understandable. I mean, all of us think of, maybe how many jobs that you've held in your career and how scary it is maybe to move from one job where you know what you're doing and you're comfortable to another job. But, everyone, I think the way I would answer that is, you have to make the decision for yourself and what is best for you. And if you want, to work for a competitive wage and integrated employment, then there's a ton of support for you out there. And you never know till you try it, right? That would be my answer.
Yeah, I would follow up with, if people are in sheltered workshops and they're used to their work community, then by all means, they certainly can stay there if that's what they want. Probably Barb or Barbara would be in a better position to answer it, because there may come a point where you decide you would like to earn more money, or you might like to do a different job or learn new skills. And there are choices out there, whether it's seeking services from DVRS or seeking services from DDD. And that's what this is about. That's what Employment First is about, that you have choices. And if you want to work in competitive employment in the community, then you have these opportunities and you can make that choice. And I don't know if Barb wants to mention it, but there must have been a point where you decided you wanted to do something different.
Charles, going to your answer.
Yes.
Like what I did, I went and got a job to take the, so I can be able to work and be able to pay bills. And I stuck it out for a long time. And I said, well, my dream will be coming. It's like I would say, I hope it'll come, but I stuck it out for the longest time, and that's how I got this what I wanted.
And that's good. And
Yeah,
if other people feel similarly to Barbara, then you can make that effort. You could speak to your support coordinator in DDD. You can ask either a guardian or a family member, a trusted friend to help you apply for services at DVRS, or you could contact Disability Rights New Jersey for information about how to do that. Those are all options. It's about choices.
yep, it is. Of choices, what kind of work you want to do, what career you want to do, and where you want to work.
I agree. Very much so, Barbara.
And October is National Developmental Disabilities Employment Awareness Month too, it is. Yes, it
Perfect
is.
timing.
Yeah, Jill.
There you go. So you'll see that Charles and I both dropped our email addresses in the chat. Feel free if, you leave this session and you think, oh, you've digested the information and then you come up with a
Right.
question later, please feel free to reach out to us. Also, go to disabilityrightsnewjersey.org and check out all the resources we have there. Any of the things that we may have mentioned throughout the course of the presentation, any of the documents, if you can't find them, we're happy to share them with you.
Yes, if anyone wants to contact us afterwards and you have questions that came to mind that you didn't think of during the presentation, please feel free to do so. We'd love to share the information we have with you. Okay, we're coming up on the end, so if anyone has any last minute questions, now might be the time.
Well, hopefully, all of you are able to take something new away from this presentation and share it with your networks or your families or information for yourself. We hope you found it informative.
Well, thank you so much, Jill and Charlie, for giving us this great information, and for everyone else who spent this rainy Thursday. Jersey, it's rainy.
My power stayed on.
Thursday afternoon. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And I just actually looked out the window and the wind is blowing here. So I'm like, stay on. But anyway, I want to thank everyone for participating this afternoon, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.